Who are we? Meaning, how do we discern how to move through the world? In each moment, different emotions, different thoughts are arising in us, different interpretations of the world, different reactions to the world. So, why does what come up come up? It takes looking at patterns and habits, understanding the way the subconscious mind works. So, from birth to the age of 7, we're like a sponge, downloading everything from the world around us, all the thoughts, all the emotions, all the interpretations, all the reactions, all the habits. It's all going in, it's all going in, it's all going in. It's being stored there. And every time we move through the world, this is what we access. And we move through it. And it gets worn in that little bit more. And so by the time we're 7, we already have all of this information of thoughts and emotions, of reactions and interpretations written into us. So when we start making decisions for ourselves, we start to say, that's me. That's who I am. Because it's what's built inside of us. So when we're moving through the world, this is what comes up in response. The interpretations are drawn from all the information we have. The reactions are drawn from all the information we have. In each moment. So that's the first realization to waking up, to realizing that everything that arises inside of us isn't necessarily who we are, that it can be patterns. And so the next step is observing these patterns and deciding which ones we will listen to. So how do we determine which ones we listen to? For me, I learned to do it by how I felt. And I call it the inner compass. So the more suffering that I felt, I always found was a signal that I was off course. I was believing or holding onto something that wasn't true. And the more untrue it was, the more suffering that I felt. Now, when we're in that, we never want to believe it. But that's the thing, when we're in that, when we're in the suffering, what will arise around us will be emotions, thoughts, interpretations, and reactions to do with suffering. So it's always going to feel real and right. Because there's a primary understanding that all of this information that comes in is organized into feeling vibrations. So in the vibration of anger, you have all of these interpretations, all of these reactions, all of this information, all of these reasons to be angry, all of these times you've seen anger in your life. It's all in that vibration. In fear, the same. In stress, the same. And it's all patterned together in these different vibrations. The same with positive emotions. The more free I felt, the more at home, the more I know what is arising is in alignment. And that's the compass that I used. Most people don't really like that. Because there's an ego in us which is attached to the suffering and attached to saying the suffering is real. Because the ego gets life from that, which is a hard truth to swallow. But the ego is essentially just getting life from identifying with what arises inside of us, the thoughts, the emotions, the interpretations, the reactions. Like, it's getting its life from that because the ego exists on that live stream of identity. I am this. And suffering is a stream of energy which will continue to recycle and continue to give this ego more and more life, more and more life. So the compass, that's how we discern. The more suffering, the less truth. The more free, the more truth. And as we're moving through life, we observe this, we observe these patterns. It's always going to feel real and right. Remembering that when we're in suffering, it's always going to feel real and right because the feeling is going to determine the lens we look through, the interpretations, the reactions, the emotional, the mental data that arises will all going to be in that vibration. It's always going to feel real and right. So what do we then do from there? We observe who we are behind it all. So through our lives, what has stayed the same? Through your life, what has stayed the same? When everything else changes, when the thoughts change, when the emotions change, when the interpretations change, when the reactions change, when it all changes, what's the same? What watches? What's aware? You take everything else away and you just see that empty awareness with nothing else there. That's you. That's you behind even your soul. That's what existence is. And depending on where we are with this level of awareness, determines what comes through. So with the inner compass, the more freedom, the more suffering. The more freedom is the more tapped in we are to the space, this awareness. The more suffering is the more separate we are, the more we believe the external reality to be real. So the freedom came into separation in order to experience itself. And in the separation, the suffering, because it forgot its source, it split out. It didn't just come here, it went out in all these different directions, tearing out. So who are you behind it all? And then as we tap into this knowledge, the knowledge that it's patterns that have been placed into us, the vibration shifts from suffering to freedom. And what comes through changes. The patterns and the pathways we access change. And I'm speaking about a very linear level of subconscious being influenced by the external reality, but there's also more influences even beyond that, like on the psychic realm. What vibration you're in can attract thought and emotional waves that are universal, that are synchronistic. The universe starts to shift and change to match up to you and what frequency you're in. There's so many levels, but in order to just keep it grounded to a level that most people can relate to on the mind, know that what arises in you doesn't necessarily mean that it's you. It just could be a pattern that's been placed in you. And you determine how close to truth it is by how it feels. And if it feels like suffering, it's always going to feel real and right. However, the knowledge that it's not necessarily you allows you to stand back and let it go. And in that standing back and letting it go, you move more to freedom. You move more to the space which is always there behind. As everything else changes, you move from separation into unity. And as you do this, the thoughts, the emotions, the interpretations, and the reactions shift. And we can do this by shifting where we focus, whether we're always focused on separation and the reality, the appearing material reality, or we can focus on the space, the awareness that's behind it all, when everything else is impermanent. And as we tap into this space, the rest of it naturally fades. So there's no need to get this area of suffering, this dense area of suffering, and try to fight it or to fix it or to shift it with more. Because when we're in the middle of this, we're only going to get access to more of this. Because the thoughts and the emotions are a reflection of the feeling vibration we're in. That's why when we're in suffering, it's like fire fighting fire, a shadow fighting a shadow. It can just seem to take us lower and lower and lower. But when we see that it's not necessarily us, and we stand back, not by bypassing it, not by throwing it away or pushing it away, because it's still an aspect of us. The place where there's suffering is the exact same place where there's bliss. It opens from within, from the middle of it. So it shifts by feeling it, not by believing the story or the mental pattern that we've attributed to it, because that will be the reason for the suffering. We've changed the story we have to it. But if we remember what it is behind the story, we empty the labels and we just feel it. We sit with it. We allow it to be there. It'll transform like itself, like the sun shining onto an area that was covered in darkness and decay. It's always going to create life from the same potential, from the inverse. So it's not like we move from suffering to light or from separation to unity. It's always there within it. It opens from within. The sun is always there. The sun never goes away, does it? It just appears to. Because there's a blockage. And the blockage is the attachment to the mental story. So when we remove the identification and feel it, feel how the sun's always there, even if it's not shining on our skin.